Welcome to the Zanshin Podcast. I'm with David Ito and I'm Raul Montolfo.
So today's topic we're going to review, David, is strict training.
Strict training in the martial arts.
The martial arts.
There's been a lot of news articles about the harshness of judo training and how it needs to be changed. You know, there's been people dying, people getting arms broken. I think in the last 2 weeks there's like 2 articles.
What do you think? Why do you think they attribute that to? Suddenly there's these articles about, because we all know that strict training has been at least going on for quite some time and stuff too. So do you think suddenly that this has been brought to the forefront because of the way the political situation is with everybody now and stuff too?
Hitting someone to make them conform is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
In order to make them conform, you have to, I don't know what.
Be kinder?
Well, the thing about in the old days,
Yeah.
they talked about that the student has EG. EG is willfulness. And then that willfulness, you have to forge out of their system, hammer it out, and then that EG, that willfulness, becomes konjo, fighting spirit. And then that's that fighting spirit that you will never give up. And so the thing that happens is that you become like the adversary with the teacher. The teacher becomes like your worst enemy, and you're going to beat the teacher no matter what. No matter what the teacher does, you will defeat the teacher.
Correct.
But then when it ends up happening is that today people just quit.
Yeah, well, it's easy. Yeah, it's an easy way out and stuff too. But I mean, does it think? I guess in your experience and stuff too, and we're going to go into that also too, our own personal experiences and stuff too. Was there always that? Did you ever feel that like I need to beat my teacher and stuff too?
Oh yeah, I totally had.
That's interesting.
I had that from probably day one, where the teacher and the students were very mean to me, and I said I'm going to beat them.
Yeah.
I may not be very good, but I'm going to beat them. And
that's a very interesting way, because me personally, I never saw it that way. And I had very, very strict, hard training and stuff too. I wanted to show, not to beat them, but I wanted to show that I can do what you can do, and I can do it just as well as any of the students. And whatever you show me, you're gonna look at me and go, that's my student. That you did exactly what I asked you to do, and you did it proficiently. And I saw you by everything you did. That's how I always looked at it. I never looked at it as like I want to beat them. That's a very interesting.
No, yeah, I mean like. The senior students in Furia Sensei he was very strict.
Correct.
And he was also to me, he was very mean. I felt like he was super mean, and I felt singled out. And, on my second day as a student, one of the senior students beat me up. And I hated that person for 3.5 years, until I became a black belt. And then that person in the dressing room sticks out their hand and then goes, "Good job." And I was like, reluctantly.
Not really.
Yeah.
Well, it's that old saying. It's like the guy who gets slapped never forgets. The guy who slaps him will always forget, right?
Yeah,
I mean, and that's sort of the same thing. But that's interesting, because I never, starting the Aikido with Furia Sensei, I remember those classes being very vigorous and everyone being very tough. You know what I mean? But to me, it was more like, I want to show like, okay, I wanted what they had.
Yeah.
I saw it's like, okay, I want that. And whatever it took to get it, I'm going to get it. You know what I mean? But I never felt that sort of like I want to dominate that person or dominate them and stuff too.
Well, but that's the thing, is that like I'm small.
Correct.
And so whenever someone would come into the dojo and challenge us, they'd be like, you want some of this? And you're like, wait, me? And so people always used to pick on me.
Yeah.
And like that's the thing, is that like someone like you who's much taller than them, they're still thinking, gosh, if this guy gets good enough, he's just going to destroy me, so I'm not going to beat him up. Yeah. But someone like me, they go, he's probably not going to get as good as me, so I'm going to beat him up.
Yeah.
And so, I was throttled on a daily basis until, not until, but like maybe a month in, I started like working out like crazy, lifting weights, doing cardio. I mean, I was doing like 20 to 25 hours of cardio and weight training outside of training every day in the dojo.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I rode my bike to Pasadena City College and back.
Yeah.
So I was like, you may be able to beat me with the technique.
But your mentality was that I'm gonna smash you. I'm going to smash the guy that I'm going to train with,
Yeah.
and eventually
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
get
smash
Yeah.
because
I'm super willful. I mean, look at this thumb. They say the thumb, if your thumb bends, means that your will bend. My will not bend. Right? Like,
oh, well, unfortunately, mine's bending a little bit.
and so someone like me, like, I'm all, I will get you. You know, I'm keeping score.
Yeah.
You know, like, do you ever see Billy Madison with Adam Sandler?
Yeah, of course.
And then there's that point where he goes, I was kind of mean to people. And he calls up Steve Buscemi. I don't know what the character's name is, Steve Buscemi, played by Steve Buscemi. And he's like, hey, I'm really sorry for what I did. And Steve Buscemi goes, oh, no, it's no big deal. Hangs up the phone and then crosses his name off the list.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, that's the way I was, because they were, I mean, people would smash me, throw me on the ground mercilessly.
Yeah.
You know, like when I wasn't even a black belt, and, you know, after first class, they have a black belt class afterwards, they said, oh, you're staying. And I was like, whoa, what? And then, and then they're like, you're staying. And then people just smashed me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what did I do?
And it's so funny because, I mean, on the physical part too, because for me being bigger and stuff too, it was like people wanted this, maybe a smaller guy and stuff too, wanted to prove, who was at a higher level.
Yeah.
Wanted to prove, like, look, this is a big guy and I'm going to do what I want. So too, I'm going to, I'll lock him, I'll throw him and stuff too, I'll submit him. Because because I'm technically better than he is. So I always felt kind of the opposite. Like, these guys were trying to show that their technique really worked. But the way I looked at it was that then for me, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to learn your secrets. I'm going to learn what you do. You know what I mean? Because you're basically bounding me. And then I'm going to turn that eventually around and stuff too. And I'm going to take what you have and stuff. But I guess that's kind of how I saw it. It's funny how different students have different perceptions and stuff. But going back to the strict training part, did you feel that the training was? Did you enjoy the harshness? Because it's two different. There's two different ways now, right? I mean, the way strict training is now. There's that physical part that we went through, same generation and stuff too. Even though I'm a little older than you, but it was more of the physical part was, you knew that every time that you came on the mat, that it was going to be a battle. That it was going to be physically demanding. That you were going to, took every ounce of that last 10 minutes of the class just to get back up, just to keep going forward. But I wonder now if that type of training, that type of mentality does even exist anymore. Does a teacher?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But the thing is, I never felt that, what you're talking about, because I became in such good shape and so technically strong that I never had the point where I was like, oh no, I'm in deep water. After a certain point, I was like, bring it. David Goggins calls it taking souls.
Yeah.
I'd watch, and then when I'd see people start to sputter, I'd be like, onegai shimasu.
Yeah.
And then tear them up. And then I would go, no, I'm gonna keep their name on this longer. But that's the thing, is that, like, yes, there's strictness and then there's harshness.
Yeah.
See, like, I felt that my training was unfair. And it was unfair because Frusense never said to me, you need to be like this. Other students never said you need to be like this.
Yes.
They just smashed you, and then you're like, what did I do?
Yeah.
Like one time I was stretching like this at dinner, and someone's like, do you lift weights? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh my God, you have to stop lifting weights and all these different things. And so they got me to stop lifting weights.
Yeah.
But that's because, like, I could resist them physically because I was physically stronger than them. And so to level the playing field, they said, oh, you shouldn't lift weights.
That's interesting.
Even though lifting weights is really bad for Aikido.
Yeah, and the thing is too with jiu-jitsu was different arts and just different movements and things, and it just wasn't. You were going to get smashed. You were going to get. There was no way around it. That it is a constant pressure. It is a constant, even to this day and stuff too. You could get a guy that, wrestled in high school or college a little bit, and in good shape. It goes to the gym, and certain techniques are just going to be very difficult to maneuver and to make it work and stuff too. You know what I mean? So there's always this internal fight, but you also have to have this thing where it was like that you knew that at any point that it could be somebody like that, because you didn't know. Even because a guy had a belt on as a blue belt, that guy could have been a blue belt for 10 years and been a Division I wrestler for all you know. You don't know. So there was always that. To me, was always the I knew that the harder the practice was, the more that I even got smashed, I knew that in the long term, that every time was going to be building and building and building. So the more stricter it was, the harder it was, the more I enjoyed it. Where I think now, at least my perception is and stuff too, is that you don't see that. Students want that sort of like, oh, like you said, if they saw you in the dojo, they're like, oh, I don't want to train with Ito Sensei or Ito-san because he's gonna just smash me, so I'm gonna avoid him. I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if they do, then comes the excuses like, oh, my shoulder's really bad today, or I hurt my shoulder, or I hurt my knee. I can't really train that hard with you. They preface everything before they go. Whereas like when we trained, I think it was more like you couldn't do that. And the teacher, even if the sensei saw that, would still be like, no,
No,
that
but
doesn't exist here.
Students just became students still did it. They just became very adept at grabbing the person right next to them right away.
Yeah.
I mean, like after a certain point, I started being the third man out all the time. And then people that were higher ranked, bigger, stronger, faster, all these different things would say, I'm going to sit this one out. And I'd be like, what? What happened to you're such a tough guy? Oh my God, but that's the hard part about, harsh, strict training, right? Like the teacher is supposed to create the environment so that you can grow. And so in my case, if I'm speaking for Furuya Sensei now, like now I never talked to him about it, but like they gave me what I needed.
Yeah.
Even though like it was so, I would leave and I'd be driving home so mad because like someone tried something, someone tried to beat me up, someone beat me up since he was mean to me. And then and they never said like, look, this is the problem that we're having with you. No one ever, I just was like, why is these people trying to beat me up? And I was like, okay, game on. And then they're like, this guy's a terrorist.
Did you feel that, do you think it would have, if Sensei would have sat down with you and really kind of went through that, do you think that's something you'd have really embraced and stuff too? Or do you think you still would have been the same?
I wish he would have though, because some of the things that they did, I just became resistive. Mm. And so because I resisted them, it made it worse. But no one ever said, this is what you're doing wrong. And then I didn't understand that I could go to Sensei and be like, this is happening. What's wrong? Mm. I was just like, okay. And then I just bit down. And then every person who I train with, I just murdered them. Mm. Because the thing is that like my desire in the beginning was to get as good as everyone else so that I could smash them. And then when that happened, they all just ran away. Yeah. Right, but that the point is that strictness and that harshness, there was no dialogue. There was no understanding. Like this is the way. The reason why the training is like this is so that you can go to this place. And then so I was just like, oh, okay, MFer, it's game on. Yeah. But the thing is that a few years ago I had dinner with Reverend Kojima from Zanshin Temple. Mm. And we were talking about something, and then we were talking about like strict training. And he told me that in the Zen temple, when you become a priest, the senior priests are intentionally harsh on you. And I was like, whoa, why? He said, because you need it. And I go, well, what if you don't need it? He said, everyone needs it. Mm. And I said, how harsh are they? He said, they are as harsh as they want to be and as cruel as they want to be. Short of hating you or something like that. And I was like, but what, doesn't that create animosity? And he said, yeah, it does.
Of course.
And I was like, but, after the fact, you become a priest and then now you're like, hey, Tom, and then he said that, well, if that happens, you find that's where you need your work.
Do you think that animosity and stuff too is good in a school, in a martial arts school?
It's hard because the thing is that in Zen, right, like you're constantly searching for enlightenment. So whatever comes up is the thing you got to work on, right? Correct, so if I'm mad at you for your harshness, and then I go to the head priest and we talk about it, he's like, oh, well, there's where you need to work on it. Because you already understand that the structure is the senior is harsh on the junior.
Correct.
Regardless, I go, what if you don't want to be? He says, you have to be. Every person needs it.
And do you think that Sensei, when he looked down on, I should say look down, or watch the practice and stuff too, he had to be fully aware that there was those kind of feelings from you and stuff too, and other students too, or students that are trying to sort of separate themselves from the stronger person and stuff too. He had to have seen that, right? Do you think that that's something that as a teacher, do you think that that's something that benefits the student? to try to go, okay, I see that this is the way, I'm going to let this go. I'm going to keep this atmosphere going? Or do you think that there were times where he's going to pull back and say, okay, we're not going to have that. That's not the kind of practice we're going to have today. Or point something out to you and stuff too.
Well, I was kind of like for lack of a better word, I was kind of like their guard dog.
Mm.
And so, right, you want the guard dog to bark at every person. You just don't want the guard dog to bark at you.
Yeah.
You know, but but then a certain point came when I would bark at even sensei. And then that's where things came to a head. But the thing is that, like, no one ever said, hey, man, this is what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And oh, my gosh.
And why do you think that is?
Because it's another very Zen thing, I think. Well, I'm not sure. I never asked him.
Yeah.
One
What
time.
interpretation? What do you think it would be?
One time, I think I believe it was happenstance, right? Like one time he said, "No, I took a big risk on kicking you out," but it worked. You know, when Fru Sensei kicked me out, it worked. But like it was a very harsh time. I was all by myself, and then you didn't know what to do, and a lot of students always fail at that point because now they're left to their own devices. So Sensei was like, "Oh, you think you know everything? Or then teach yourself," and then you're like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah.
And most students can't come back from that.
Yeah, but I think what's kind of uniquely different with you, and I remember the times when I was training those days in Aikido here, but I can remember also too that it was a much more intimacy and stuff too with the teacher and stuff too. You had much more of a tighter relationship.
I didn't think I had a very tight relationship with him.
But and I guess maybe that's not the right word. I guess you had a relationship where to kick you out, to push you the way he did and stuff too.
Well,
some of the schools now, to my point is there's so many schools now, like for what is this at our academy, we have so many students that it becomes it's difficult to really kind of pinpoint. Like you see certain people have talent and stuff too, but to control all of that becomes very difficult and stuff too, and maybe because the training here was very hard training that it kind of weeded out a lot of people. I could say that also too with with Chiba Sensei, his style that he taught and stuff too. But I guess my point is like it seemed to me that there was much more of an attention with you and Sensei and stuff too, and some of the other senior students where he saw certain talent in you and pushed that. And let that kind of go and stuff too.
I don't know. I mean, that's speculation because we never really talked about it. All I know is that like I was hell bent on beating them, right? Like it's that Kimura's. They train 3, I'll train 6.
Yeah.
I mean, like I did so much cardio because I said to myself, man, you could break my technique, but you won't break my cardio. And so my cardio was like top notch in those days, and like. But I mean, like, I'm the type of person who I was on vacation at 6 in the morning. I'm on the treadmill in the gym, wherever I'm on vacation, because I'm not gonna. And I was like, someone is doing cardio, and I better do cardio. I better at least run for 30 minutes so that no one's gonna. I don't fall behind.
Correct.
Right.
Correct,
but like, that's that thing that strict training in the past, it had to be that way, because they needed to prepare you for battle.
Correct.
That hard, there was a popular YouTuber from Europe, from England, I was watching, and he was saying that the boarding school was originally designed to develop warriors.
Correct.
And so they sent their children, 8 or 12 or whatever it is, to these boarding schools to toughen them up because of the group dynamics, because of the loneliness, because of all these things that's what made you a man and made you into what they believed would be a warrior. And that you think about that same ideas in Spartan culture, Japanese culture, and all these different things that, look, I'm going to slap you now, but this is going to benefit you today.
Yes.
I've read a lot of Japanese like apprenticeship books, and there was one where it was a Japanese traditional like comedian, and he said that he started training, at the 6 day, 6 month, the 6th year thing, and that he said, oh, I remember peeing my pants on stage. And then my grandfather slapping me across the face. He said, I remember every lesson when he slapped me across the face. He said, I don't slap my students, but I remember every lesson. And that's the hard part, that to create that discipline structure, you slap the student. Like, do you ever see Ip Man 4 or Master Z.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen the series and stuff too.
The kid calls his Master Z Sifu, and then Ip Man's kind of like, ugh, But that at what point does like that's your father, right? So then you want to go to him and say, I'm scared, and the person's like, be a man, and you don't know how to deal with that because you're 7 years old.
Yeah.
And then you stop crying, be a man. Yes, master. Like that becomes like this really weird place, right? So then now you're not really the parent, you're their master. And then, like there's all these things that come up with that. But then the hard part is that we don't need to develop that warrior mentality. We don't need to develop people for war anymore, but we still need to develop warrior mentality. But how do you not do that with physical harshness, mental cruelty, put downs, all those little things that they used to use in the past that they can't use today.
Yeah, and that really becomes the, does that style of teaching and stuff, does it have it a place or is there an environment for it now?
I believe that it is very beneficial and effective. I just can't do it. I just can't.
What do you mean you can't do it in which?
I can't do it. I try to be. I can be strict, but I can't. I don't want to hit people, and I don't want to put them down.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to tear. It's like the military. The old military, they got to tear you down to build you up.
But the interesting thing about it too is when you talk about tearing down and stuff too. A lot of times it isn't really so much of like, David, you suck. It's more like, and I'm sure you went through this also too. Why did you put your foot there? Why did you move that way?
No. That for instance didn't do that.
Yeah, I'm just telling my experiences and stuff too, right? It was always why. Why did you do that? You moved the wrong place. Why would you give your back like that? Why would you move? And that in itself to me was just as bad as someone just saying you're, a freaking idiot. You know what I mean? To me that was still like almost like that sort of that being, that harsh training and stuff too, that verbal harsh training, because to me it was always I want to show to my teacher that I'm paying attention to what you're doing, trying to copy exactly what you do, trying to learn the technique, and try to develop the best I possibly can, which meant that I'm really concentrating on what we're doing. And if he came to me and said like, well, why aren't you getting it? To me that was like the worst. That was to me was being yelled at, being called an idiot, and maybe not to other people, but to me that is. I still believe you could do that with students now, and when I teach, I kind of am that way actually.
Well, but that's the thing is that since he never spoke to me like that, right? Like he didn't say like, well, he didn't ask me a question, and like in a traditional JoJo, everything is rhetorical.
Correct.
Right. You don't say, well, the reason why I'm doing it is that he never said that to me, right? And so we and quite frankly, like we didn't have like one-on-one conversations, and then he rarely corrected me on the mat, right? But like. It got to this place where the environment where you're getting in trouble for things that you may or may not have done. And then you can't say, it was this guy that did it, not me.
Yes.
And then you just have to gum on or persevere and take it.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, this is unfair. Like, I did not do that thing. And then I got in trouble. Those 5 guys did it, and I got in trouble too. And then I would become angry because it's not fair because I tried to follow the letter of the law. Yeah. I did. They didn't, but I still was grouped in and got in trouble too. So it's not. He never on the mat. He never said like. I mean, very few times did he ever talk to me on the mat, but like, it all depends on your tone. You could say like, why do you think you should put your foot there, and then that person can, if you have a dialogue, that person can say, I felt like that was the most convenient balance point, and then you go. That might be, but then that sets you up for this, and so that's why we put our foot here. And okay, that's why.
Correct.
But when you just say, why the F did you, who do you think you are? See, it starts to become personal. And so you can say, even with a harsh tone, please don't put your foot there, this and that. But then the hardest part is that in the old days, it was always personal. It was always your disappointment. It was always, who do you think you are? You're going to screw this whole thing up. You might as well quit. Your left foot, your other left foot, you might as well just quit. And then you go, wow, I guess I'm so bad, I might as well just quit. Not knowing that perhaps this person is trying to force you to work harder. And most people didn't want that. It's not that I didn't want to work harder. I was just tired of the butt kickings.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to get strong and I'm going to come back and get some too.
Yeah.
But like, some people don't have that. Some people just go, I don't need this. I don't need to pay money for this.
And that becomes, that is an issue and stuff too. It's like, then it becomes then there's a financial part, which we've talked about in the past, in our other podcast about the whole part of the money part. Schools financially trying to keep, students in to keep the doors open, but I still think that the strictness of training, I think that at least in the environment that I see now has changed dramatically, and
that largely is probably due to the fact that 99.99% will never have to use it.
Correct.
And so because you never really have to use it, there's no immediacy. There's no for me, I was like, I'm not running on this treadmill because no one's going to beat me on Monday. I'm gonna go do push-ups so that no one will outlift me. And so, but there was like this immediacy, like I'm not going to get no one's going to tear me up.
Yeah.
And so then but today you don't have that. Teacher doesn't get that mad. Students aren't that mean. You don't have to use it on the street. You don't do competition. People today know that or believe that there's nothing around that corner. So then they don't have to not eat that thing.
Yeah, and I think, and I can speak to jiu-jitsu and stuff too, is that, we are constantly, there is a part, obviously, the technical part, we start the class, and then there's obviously the rolling and stuff too, which is our, and we have competitions, obviously, tournaments, but, but each class, there is that rolling, which is the closest to probably being in a fight that there is and stuff too, right? And I can say that, that at least I know that with the jiu-jitsu students and stuff too, is that there is always that element of we're gonna roll, and it's gonna be somebody could be heavier. You may be more technical than they are, but the guy's physically stronger than you are. So there's always that sort of kind of that tension and stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's now, and our dojo was like that too. It was Gladiators Arena in the 90s.
Yeah.
But then the thing about it is that the more you essentially talked about like Gendai, which is modern martial arts, Gendai martial arts, everybody wants to wade in the shallow end, but few want to venture off into the deep end.
Yeah.
And so, the person who talks a little bit too much, teaches, fakes the injury, and just kind of like tanks it in, they're they can still roll, and the atmosphere can still be that way, but then they could just do just enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no immediacy. If you knew the Crips and the Bloods were waiting outside in the parking lot, you got to get this choke down. Yeah. You would really get that choke down because you're going to go on that parking lot and it's on.
Yeah.
You would really learn that technique. You would hyper focus. You would train harder. But if you're like, oh, my Mercedes is out there, I got my Jamba Juice smoothie in there, my Kenny G CD. Get home, my wife's got steak on.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have my 1952 Chardonnay with it, and this that, or and then there's no immediacy. Yeah. But like that's at like my Mr. T in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
Talking about he got nobody in this world. He's sleeping on a mattress on the floor. All that stuff, that hunger that person has. We lose it as we get older.
Yeah.
Because I like things my way. I have to drink bottled water. I don't drink out of the hose anymore.
Yeah.
When you were young, you probably drank. Did you drink out of the hose?
Oh, I race regularly.
I would never drink out of the hose today.
Oh.
I don't. Do I want AIDS? But in the old days, I was like,
yeah, right.
You didn't know any better.
Yeah, even people's houses you didn't even know. You get the hose out and turn on, right?
Yeah. And you're doing that probably not the nicest neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Today you're like, ew, Pasadena water, disgusting. I only drink Thousand Oaks tap water. It's like every faucet in our house has a filter. But that's the thing, is that like you lose that edge as you become older and less competitive. And so how do you keep that edge? You have to be strict on yourself. But the hard part today about everyone having the opportunity to train, hey, martial arts is for everyone. Few really want to be warriors. Most people are they don't like weights, and so this is just their weight training.
Yeah, I know. There's that always that constant, and we've seen students like that come through so much for the last 10 years, and just it's a great topic to have a discussion at a party and stuff too. Oh, what do you do? I'm in a rowing club and stuff too. How about you? Oh, I do jiu-jitsu.
Funny story is that a long time ago, when I was a kind of a psychopath, I was at this bar, and I was playing pool, and my buddies bring this guy up, and they're like, "Man, this guy does Shotokan karate," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And like I'm shooting pool, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I'm like like fourth dan and all this stuff," and I was like, "Huh." He's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "I do Aikido," and he went, "Oh, Aikido." He's like, and I was like, "Yeah," and so he had his hand on the table, and then my hand just went across his knuckles. I go, "Pretty sharp points. Doesn't look like you really trained that hard." And the person, he like looked down, and then he just put his head down and walked away. And that's all I said is I just ran my fingers across his knuckles, and I said, "Pretty sharp points. Doesn't look like you train all that hard." And then
that reference that he needs those calluses on it from hitting the Makiwara board for a while. Apparently wasn't doing that.
And I always remember, I don't know if you remember this, you introduced me to this Korean martial arts teacher a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. And I can't even remember the person's name, but the only thing I do remember is his knuckles look like flattened quarters.
Yeah.
And I walked away, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy."
That was my old Hapkido teacher.
I was like, I don't ever want to be punched by this guy. So
he tells a great story. There's a great story that he had gotten. When he first got here from Korea, he opened a school, a dojang in the valley. So he gets pulled over. He had an old truck, right? He didn't have much money, so he hadn't even brought his wife and kids over yet. So anyway, he gets pulled over, and he has his hands on the steering wheel, as the police told him to, and stuff too. And he said he just remembers a police officer just looking at his hands, and those knuckles, on both hands, and he's like, "Okay, sir, well, next time just go a little slower." Stop and stuff too. And he goes, "Oh, thank you very much." But he said he remembered, and the police officer actually did comment on his knuckles.
Yeah. Well, that's like when you're supposed to be able to size a person up, an opponent, like in seconds.
Correct.
Right. And so the sharper the person's nose is, you go, how hard is this person trained? It doesn't have a break in the middle. It's not flat at all. But if you see a guy like this or the cauliflower here, you go, that person does some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you're constantly doing the calculations on someone. Oh, wearing your karate shirt out at the club. Okay. Really sharp, steep, nice looking nose. Okay, never been hit in the face, right? And like, that's that thing, like, does that person train all that hard?
Yeah.
I mean, that your Hapkido teacher, when I shook his hand and I saw those knuckles, I was like, "Oh God!"
Yeah.
What it took for him to create that in it. I mean, it looked like someone had sewn quarters.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah, it was impressive. Yeah. And he didn't. His funny thing is he didn't have very big hands, but his hands were just so like, from grabbing and hitting and that it just they were like a block of cement. You know what I mean? And trust me, I've been hit by him a few times and stuff too, more than once, and believe me, it was very, very. He was a very, very powerful guy and stuff too. But again, you're right. Seeing those, you're like, "Oh, okay, that's not somebody that if he's gonna hit me."
Yeah. Is he still alive?
Yes. He's in his. He's almost 80 actually.
He goes like this with his hands. Like, can't really make a knuck fist anymore, man.
Well, that's the one thing he did. I remember that. I regrettably I haven't seen him in a while and stuff too. And but the last time I did see him, he had mentioned that also too, that his hands were just he still had this he still liked to hit the but he was saying he goes they just hurt all the time. You know what I mean? So. Yeah,
like I always think about this story when I was a white belt. First couple months at a demonstration, and I was just giving out flyers. I wasn't participating in the demonstration per se. And when I was going through the crowd, this old man stops me. He says, "I did judo my whole life." And then he shows me his hands, and they're gnarled, just beat up. And he says, "This is going to be you in the future." And then he goes over to all the other students and shows them and stuff. And I was just like, "Yeah, okay, pops." But as I get older, I always remember that old man. I was like, "Man, that's gonna be me one of these days." Except for I'm not gonna be showing my hands and be like, my shoulder doesn't quite move that way.
No, that's the thing with just my knuckle. My kid, I think friends look at, is it like onset of arthritis or something? And I'm like, no, it's just the calluses and your knuckles from grabbing, right?
Yeah, but that's all that self-care that you neglected your whole career that today may not be able to be like fixed because we didn't have that type of mindset. The mindset was choose the hard way.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
I remember when I was a student, I went to a hot yoga class. And I was like, yeah, this will be good. And I look up at the ceiling. I go, oh, there's the heat vent. Laid my mat down there, and the teacher comes up and he goes, that's the hottest spot in the room. And I go, oh yeah, I know. And like, but I mean, I routinely sought out that the hardest way, because Furuya Sensei talked about that. Never choose the easy way. Always choose the hard way. And I was like, I'm doing that. Yeah. Everyone does 10 push-ups. I'll do 20 push-ups.
Yeah.
But like you don't really think about rest and relaxation because it's too heavily balanced in yang, power, getting this thing there's not enough yin. So that's the hard part about the harshness of training. Like boot camp doesn't last forever. Buds for Navy SEALs only lasts for 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not 60 years.
Correct.
Because you're supposed to get into shape, get to a certain level, and then maintain that level.
Maintain it, correct.
So the teacher shouldn't have to be harsh and strict on you. You drop a piece of paper, you pick it up and throw it away. The teacher doesn't have to go, hello, and then you go, oh, I'm sorry about that, and then throw it away because you busted them. You should already know as a good student that when you drop a piece of paper or you see a piece of paper, you automatically pick it up, even if it's not your problem. You didn't do it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that like the harshness and the strictness has to find a certain level where it levels off, because nobody can handle that 24/7/365.
Yeah, and to your point, I don't think and nor should it be expected to. You get to a certain level and stuff too, where you should know. Like you said, you get to a certain level that we have, in Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu and stuff too. It's like, okay, now I need to maintain that. You know what I mean? Just to keep myself in good shape. Still train hard. Okay, I'm not going to train 5 days a week super hard. Okay, twice a week I'm going to train, with the toughest people I can, and the other ones do the drills and the things I do to keep conditioning and stuff, to develop, keep my technique and refine it, That's really the key to it and stuff too. But I guess for us on the strictness part of what we were talking about today is like starting that student, is that, would you want to put your son, or would I want to put my son to go through what we went through?
I mean, I would put my children in a strict program as long as it was a strict and well thought out program. See, the problem with our dojo is that we didn't really have a senpai kohai dojo. It was the teacher, and everyone was below that person, and then there was every man for themselves. What's supposed to happen is that the seniors are supposed to help teach the juniors and protect the juniors from the teacher. Yeah. But then the thing is that Americans don't know how to do that. They don't know how to say, Raul, make sure you don't do that. I don't want you to get in trouble. And you go, oh, thanks. They go, this guy's going to get reamed.
Yeah.
And then they watch you get reamed.
We've all seen that now.
And I mean, no, there was a time when this one person, we were doing something in the dojo, and this one student said, I'll go on a food run to King Taco. They bring all the food out. They set it all out. Everyone's eating. Sensei comes out, and Sensei's like, where's my taco? And then the person's going, oh, shoot, I forgot it. And I was standing in front of the person, and then I just stepped aside so that Sensei could yell directly at them, and then all I hear is this, thanks, dude. Because,
I've been there.
But that's the thing, is that like there wasn't a senior who said, I'm sorry, here's your taco, and give them theirs. Everybody just went, ha ha ha, you're an idiot. And that's what's wrong, because like I said, at a certain point the strictness has to hit a balance point, and you don't really have that anymore. And then you're supposed to create that internal strictness. But what ends up happening is that, like in the modern dojo, the teacher has to constantly be doing all the work. Hey, you can stop doing that. Hey, everybody, stop doing that.
Correct.
So that's why it becomes a seniors juniors problem, right?
Yeah, and I think the whole senpai kohai relationship is just something that's very, very foreign, obviously, to American students, and to try to explain that we've tried to do that at our academy and stuff too, and like, okay, and I've tried to explain, like, this is how it's structured. You know what I mean? Here's who this person is. This is how it goes. And it's our responsibility to teach the junior students the right way to conduct themselves. But that becomes a very difficult thing too, especially in our society the way it is now, where we're
Yeah.
all equal. Everything's,
Yeah.
I don't want you to see my feeling, or
Or I'm the consumer. I paid for my lessons. I didn't
Exactly.
pay to teach your class. I'm not
Exactly.
paying to clean your bathroom.
Exactly. Oh, that doesn't even exist in
But that's part of the training, right? Like the closer that you get to the teacher, the tighter, it's like the rings of the tree. The closer you get to the teacher, the tighter the rings are.
Correct.
And so your mistakes that when you stand next to the teacher, your mistakes are catastrophic, no matter how big. And everyone gets to see it and go, but that's so that they learn, I'm not supposed to do that.
Correct.
And then everyone thinks, oh my God, this guy's an idiot. But then they don't realize like your training is so much tighter and stricter, because the teacher is developing you to be the best of the best. But that's the hard part, is that most people, if you're just a weekend warrior enthusiast, do you really want some person going, what did you do? I'm sorry, what did you say? I mean, when Furia Sensei died, I can't tell you how many students came to me and said, I'm completely lost on my life. I'm like, dude, you're 50. Yeah, really? I know. But Furia Sensei was this person that, he, kept me on the straight and narrow. And I'm like, you're 50. And they go, I got to quit now because there's no structure here anymore. And I'm like, you're 50. It's like this, like you. That's the hard part when you're an adult. Like better.
Yeah, and then that could be a whole topic of discussion on the psychological part of it. We don't have to wake up Freud to figure. Some of these people, like to your point, it's like if you're a grown man and you're still looking for that figure that's sort of almost like a dad figure, then there's some issues there anyway. So I never personally, and I've had amazing teachers, I never looked at them to be like, I want a dad. I want to know. What they showed, what they taught is what I wanted to learn, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And everything that came along with it was fine. The structure, the way the relationship and stuff too, what to do, the proper way to conduct yourself. Those things were fine. But again, when someone gets to that point, I think that's a whole. That's a very troubling thing, But that edge, I think that's the, that could be a topic also too. Is like, how do you create that edge?
But that's the thing is that it's not for the teacher to create that anymore.
Which is that's the operative word.
Right, and that's the thing is that in the old days, you had to bring 51% to the table or more, and the teacher only brought 49 or less, probably more like 10. You had to bring it all. The onus of learning was all on you. Today, the onus of learning is on the teacher, and then you use the teacher as the scapegoat for the reason why you didn't make the thing that you got. But the thing is that in the end, when you say you got it, you say you did it yourself, which is the way they always say it, even in the past. But that's the thing. The teacher does not create the edge anymore.
Yeah.
You have to create that. But the thing is, the weird thing about it is that you have always created that edge. The teacher you could just leave. You could just quit. But you stayed because you felt like it gave you an edge in life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that edge is that you don't give up. You don't back down. You don't, whatever it is. So that today you have to create that edge, but you've always had to create that edge. Yeah. Today it's more relevant. Today it's more dangerous because you walk around with your martial arts t-shirt on, you may have to fight someone just because you're wearing that t-shirt. Right?
Correct, yeah.
But in the old days, you pretended, oh no, I don't know anything.
Don't know anything, yeah.
Like in Ip Man 3, when Master Z's talking to him, he says, oh, you do, do you spar? Would you like to spar? And he's like, but you do Wing Chun, right? And he's like, I dabble.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was like, you were supposed to be modest. Are you any good? If you watch all the Imams, he always just goes, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay, yeah. Exactly.
I try my best. I dabble. Because you weren't supposed to say, like, I'm the best, because that hubris will get knocked down. But the thing is that you were supposed to hide. They say the strongest eagle hides their talons. But today you have to market yourself, so you have to show how good you are. But in the old days, you never showed how good you are.
Yeah, no, that's true. Then the teachers now, a lot of them, it's more like they're up there entertaining. To make it interesting and entertaining for the students. It's not constantly. If you were to consistently show just the fundamental techniques for 6 months.
Yeah.
I don't want to. He's going to show the same technique again.
Yeah, no one wants that.
I don't want to see that. What's really cool technique? Can you show me the secret? What's the And I think there's a lot of stuff that's even in jiu-jitsu, a lot of the stuff that the more athletic techniques and stuff that have been coming out, a lot of it is also too from that, like, well, let's be more entertaining, make it, more dynamic and everything. But basically the fundamentals are going to be the fundamentals, but you can't teach that consistently to everybody at a certain point. After a few months, they're like, well, I want to get to the next class, the more advanced class, because I want to see, which is, hard. But as a teacher, you're like, no, this is the most important thing. Or this is what you really need. This is what you need to have your foundation in. But it's very difficult, because you have to entertain. That's the key.
Yeah.
So that's what's about the edge. Yeah, and I guess to me, kind of summing some of this up of the conversation we've been having is that, I still believe that there is a need and a place for strict training. Maybe not to the extent it was when we were training and stuff too. With the teachers that we've had, maybe some of the things, and in hindsight, you could look back and go, okay, well, maybe that wasn't, I didn't like the way that the way that was said or the way that was acted. But the reality of the matter is, I think that we got to a certain level that we have, is the fact that we did have that kind of teaching. That strictness. That they did push in a certain way that doesn't really exist anymore. Now, I don't think it. And so to me, it's going to be, are we losing a certain level of martial art ability and knowledge of certain things because of the fact that we weren't taught the way we were taught? Are we passing that on, or we're not passing that on? Or are we limited in what we can do and what we can teach and stuff too? So, but to me, I think that the strictness is something that should still be there. And maybe I'm just old-fashioned. I just think that there's still a place for it. And probably a lot of people disagree, and maybe that's why some of my classes, sometimes some students, and I've been told this, that probably don't come to my classes, was because I am a little hard on people. But again, like I said, everything has changed. But in my point of view, I think that strictness is something that I hope that we still can keep. We can still keep that heritage. That's my point.
For me, strictness has its place. It's hard as a teacher to create that strict discipline environment that's all-encompassing for every person, right? And so it's very, so it's hard because the students will see me yell at the senior, and then they go, I quit because I don't want that, even though he wasn't yelling at me. The hard part is that you have to have that edge in martial arts, right? There's going to become a point where you're going to have to use this on someone, and you can't go willy-nilly. You have to go strong. A person has to meet you and go, no, I'll move on to the next patsy, right? And then the only reason why they pass you by is because they can feel your strictness, they can feel your discipline, and they think, I want someone a little bit easier. But the hard part is that because the teacher doesn't create a strict environment, the students have long leashes, and then they aren't that dedicated. And then what's going to happen is, if they ever have to use it, they're going to get destroyed. But then, how many of them really want this thing? How many of them really want that? They just don't like lifting weights or doing yoga. And so this is what they find to be interesting and helps them keep in shape. And that's cool too, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that the person who really wants it is the person you really have to become strict and disciplined on. And so you have to be able to know the difference, right? That person wants it, that person doesn't. That person can be talked to this way, that person can't. But I believe that you can be strict, but it really comes back to the structure that you have. It's not me that changes the student. It's the system and the Aikido. So when you drop them into the system, the other students are supposed to come around and go, hey, you don't do that. Hey, you don't ask girls out in class. I know, dude. And not to be a jerk about it. They just go, hey, man, it's not inappropriate. And then teach you how to change. Right? It's about change. But if we are passive-aggressive about it and just beat them because they're acting a certain way, they may not get it. And that was my thing. Whatever I was doing that they didn't like, no one said, hey, man, you got to stop doing that thing. And then I probably would have stopped, because no one wants to beat up all the time. But that's the thing, the strictness, there wasn't a system around that strictness so that I could understand and change. I had to go all the way through it for almost a decade before I realized, oh, I'm kind of a jerk. Right? So that's the hard part. There is strictness, but where it is very difficult to know its role, where to put it in the program, and what students really want.
Well, guys, I want to again thank you for listening and watching in on Zanshin Podcast with David Ito, and I'm Raul Montolfo. And thank you guys again. Till our next episode, and keep training hard.
Thank you.